This is our fourth meeting, and we've spoken about, in the first meeting, we spoke about the vocation to holiness and how the vocation to holiness was central to the PS charism and reason to exist. Father Menor, he received that mission, and that's what we're all about, sharing about our common vocation to holiness. The second meeting we spoke about the devotion to the Sacred Heart, and we spoke about how the devotion to the Sacred Heart is really just a passionate love for Jesus, but truly the devotion is all about the love he has for us shown in his heart. Last meeting we spoke about prayer, right? And we spoke about the necessity of having a discipline for prayer. A daily commitment, a commitment with time, having a method, right? Sticking to it even when it's unpleasant or when there's no fruit or no consolation. And today, I wanted to move to our next topic. That's one of the also values of PS not values, one of our basic points. And I want to speak to you about self-denial. And I know that self-denial in Easter seems to be like maybe not the best moment to speak about it. But I think it is a good moment to speak about it because I think that Easter is meant to be a time for joy, but it's meant to be a time for spiritual joy. And spiritual joy and the joy that comes truly from the Spirit also is a result of self-mastery too. So I think there are many, many, many ways in which we can approach this topic. Obviously, I think that as you've gone through the life of Father Menor, you have seen plenty of examples of his permanent exercise of self-denial to a heroic place. But this is the way I like to see it for myself. When you come to think about it, you always serve someone in your life. You always serve someone. It's like we are always someone's servants. I'll give you an example. If a person is an alcoholic, who do they serve? They serve alcohol. They serve their own appetite for alcohol. And in a way, what addictions do is they start to dictate your life, right? They start calling the decisions for you. That's, let's say, an extreme place where we can see how we are always serving someone. There can also be people who serve, or there can also be people who, maybe in the law world, there's people who serve prestige. And everything about their life is having status and having prestige and having money and being recognized by others. I think that it's also true that sometimes we don't serve only one power in our life. Sometimes we serve several powers in our life. I think it's true that sometimes we serve ourselves and we serve our lower appetites. Sometimes not the highest place in our life is the thing that we're answering to. So for example, I don't know, sometimes we serve our desire for entertainment, or we serve our desire to be consoled, or we serve our desire to be comfortable. So let's put it this way. In our life, there's always someone who we serve, and there are different masters who compete for our service. In a way, and we've noticed this, there are different places in our life where they're pulling our strings and they want to have mastery over us, right? So the question is, who do we truly want to serve? And the answer is we want to truly serve the Spirit. We want to be servants of the Holy Spirit. We want to be guided in our life and in our decisions by the Holy Spirit. Okay, let me take one step back. We should be guided by a reason, because what's proper of human beings is that what should guide us is reason. When reason finds truth, then we serve the truth that we have found. But if we take it one more step, we shouldn't be serving only reason. We should be serving, although reason and the Spirit are the same thing, but we should be serving the Holy Spirit. So what is self-denial? Self-denial is the exercise where we say no to the masters that try to make us their servants. Right? It's the exercise to say no to those masters so we can give a true yes to God. And this is my perspective. If we don't learn to say no to ourselves, we will only serve ourselves. But that's the truth. Like, if you're always indulging in everything that you want, are you true master of yourself, or are you just a servant of yourself and of your? So there's a word in Spanish. The word is caprichos. Do you have a similar word in English?
Capricious.
Capricious. So when a person is
like, it's like if you're needy for something, like, oh yeah, no, I like if there's food and then it's like, oh no, I only did like eat these, like I like picky, yeah.
Capricho is when you're always giving up to your urgencies and you are always indulging in giving yourself what you want. Right? So the point I'm trying to make is, if a person doesn't exercise himself in the capacity of saying no to himself, is the Holy Spirit really governing the life of this person, or is it his indulgences who govern him? So I want to give you an example from my own life. And I think this repeats itself very much in the life of many priests. I know that when you start in the novitiate and you read the life of the saints, you are all about mortification, right? And mortification is so much part of your life, and you're like, I want to do what the saints did, right? But then when you leave the novitiate and you start, moving on in your religious life, mortification starts to be more of a good intention than a reality. And you start saying like, yeah, those were my good intentions from the novitiate, but... So what was my experience? I had a longing in my heart. And I saw the life of Father Menor and I said, wow, there's such a big distance between him and me in so many aspects, but especially in the aspect of mortification. He had the determination to be true master of himself, so he could serve the Spirit. And I saw my own life and I said, that's not happening in my life. So I said, I need something of this. And then someone spoke to me about Exodus 90, right? And I said, oh man, this sounds great. I think I really need this. And, mostly you hear lay people doing Exodus 90, but I said, I don't think that we priests are doing much better than the lay people. I think I need it too. And what happened with me as I did Exodus 90 was, number one, I saw myself much more docile to the Holy Spirit. And I'll give you examples. 2 examples that were very real in my life. When I started doing Exodus 90, when I was in like having lunch or dinner, and there was food on the table, I had the desire to indulge in having seconds, and I said to myself, do I really need it? And before Exodus 90, I would also hear that voice like, do I really need it? And my answer was, no, but there's nothing wrong with it. But now I was like, I don't need it. And I want to offer out something to the Lord. I want to be generous with Him. I want to say no to myself. So the first thing is, I saw myself much more prone to listen to the inspirations that led me to a place of restraint, and I was able to follow those inspirations. So in a way, what I saw is, when I started coming into the virtuous cycle of self-denial, is that self-denial calls on more self-denial. Well, self-indulgence calls on more self-indulgence. That's why St. Teresa of Avila, she had a beautiful insight. She said, the more you give to the body, the more the body asks of you. The more you start saying yes, the body will never be satisfied, right? The flesh will never be satisfied. The demands of the flesh, when you say yes, will only increase. But I think it's also true the inverse reality. The more you start the vicious cycle of saying no to yourself, the more you feel strong to say no to yourself in more things. And this happens in the life of the saints. And that's why they were led to a place of such self-denial that they were like living of the Eucharist. And a different thing that I noticed in my life was when I started Exodus 90, for example, also when I was, it was time to go to bed, right? And I heard an inspiration that said, why don't you go to the chapel and visit the Lord for a while? And I heard the inspiration many times. And like, before Exodus 90, I would always say like, I already did my prayer. But now I said, if you are inviting me to do this, I don't want to resist. So, how do I sum this up? I sum this up saying, when you have the capacity to say no to yourself, the more capable you make yourself of saying yes to the Lord. Because you start saying no to your false masters and more capable to saying yes to whom should be the only true master of our life. Who should lead our lives? The Holy Spirit. And St. Paul speaks about it in his letters. He says, within us, there are like two forces that are in a permanent combat. The flesh and the spirit. And he says, you can't serve both. You either serve the spirit and say no to the flesh, or say yes to the flesh and say no to the spirit. How do we bring this to practical terms? Right? My perspective is, in the same way that we have a discipline for prayer, we need a discipline for self-denial. In the same way that for prayer we say, I'm going to pray for this long, at this time, following this method, at this place, I think that we should also have a structure for self-denial. I'm going to speak from my own experience. So what am I doing right now? And I'm not doing perfectly, but I think it's better to aim and to miss than not to aim at all. So this is what I'm doing. I'm saying, we're in the octave of Easter. Of the Exodus 90 disciplines, I'm going to relax 2 of them. Because what's the temptation? The temptation is, oh, it's Easter. I'm going to give up on, like, whatever comes my way, yes, because it's Easter. My perspective is, Easter is meant to be it's meant to provide us a true spiritual joy. And I think that always a true spiritual joy always implies some level of self-denial. I remember also speaking with Father David, and he giving me a penance, and he told me, you should make a schedule for the week, and you should take an act of mortification for each day of the week. For example, I'm going to put out some suggestions. Maybe you can make a schedule and you say, Tuesdays and Fridays, no sweets or no desserts. A couple of days a week, no alcohol. A couple of days a week, I won't listen to music. I'll give up on music and audios. Yeah, I think that we need a discipline of self-denial. And I think that, and this is the heart of the matter. There's no true holiness without self-denial. Like, you look at the life of the saints, you will never find a saint who wasn't penitent or strong in his mortification. We can spend hours here going through the life of the saints, and you will never find a saint who was either penitent or strong in his self-denial. And you know what, guys? I've tried to make that case. Like, oh, I'm going to look for a saint. And It doesn't work. And the life of Father Menor, again, like, he was such a penitent man. Like, he was penitent in every single aspect. He was penitent in his eating. Like, he gave up entirely on alcohol. Entirely. And today we're going to the... like, he gave entirely on alcohol. I remember hearing the story that when the first members started to live with Father Menor, they were very, very poor initially, and they couldn't afford having desserts. And every now and then, someone gave them a cake. And every time a cake came home, Father Menor said, "Great, we have something to offer to the poor," when they knocked the door. And they were like, "Please, a cake." Like, sweets and desserts, I think, weren't part of his life. He was very mortified when it came to sleeping. I think towards the end of his life, he was like sleeping like 4 hours. I mean, sometimes like the saints, they take their mortifications to extremes that are difficult to understand. I'm not saying we got to do what the saints did right now. What I'm saying is there's no true commitment to our vocation to holiness if there's not an equally resolute commitment to self-denial. It's illusion. Like, if in your life right now there's no self-denial, there's no commitment to holiness. That's the truth. That's the hard truth. That's the hard truth. But listen. Remember that everything is meant to grow organically, starting small but being consistent into something more generous and greater. But you know what's amazing? And I want to finish with this. When you look at the writings of the saints and the life of the saints, for example, when you look at the life of a saint like St. John of the Cross, his perspective is, unless there is a complete self-denial in every single aspect of your life, unless you're willing to say no to yourself in every single aspect of your life, you will never truly fly to holiness. I know that our reaction is like, oh, then what do I keep to myself? If I'm going to say no to myself, but that's the mystery, or that's the paradox of the spiritual life. The more you say no to yourself, the more you find in God. Right? So he said this. He said, if you truly want to see, you have to choose to see nothing. He says, if you really want to taste, you have to choose to taste nothing. If you really want to enjoy, you have to choose to enjoy nothing at all. I know that this doctrine is like too hard for us. It's too hard for me. But I know that there's truth in that doctrine. And we will only be able to grasp that doctrine if we start small but consistent. There's no other way. There's no other way. Remember, who do you serve? Are you true master of yourself? Are you truly owner of your own person? Or are there still different masters of your life? Only when we say no to our masters, we can truly serve the Holy Spirit as the guide of our life. That's the place where we're meant to be led, to a place of docility to the Spirit. Remember what I said. The more I started saying no to myself, the more I started to hear Him and be able to go with Him wherever He leads me. But I think this has to start small. So I would encourage you, take small steps. Take small steps. Make a schedule. Take a small self-denial for yourself every day. Give up on small things. Give up on small things. Small no's to yourself so you can give a more complete yes to God. That's the ideal. Small no's to yourself so you can give a fuller yes to God. Is self-denial part of your life? Is there space for growth in self-denial in your life? Is there space for more generosity? Are you truly in the line, like aligned with the life of the saints in their pathway towards complete self-denial? And I know this is like ridiculous, but you look at the life of the saints, and in them it makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense. And that's what we have to aim to. Okay? And that is part of our spirituality. That's a part of the life of Father Menor. That's part of our Ignatian heritage. That's the only way that you can make space for God in your life, when you say no to yourself in the things that aren't necessary. So He's the only one. Okay?